And one of the ways that this idea of emanation and the connection with the one with the many, and the theme of light that appears philosophically, is in the Gothic cathedral. I mean, because the Gothic cathedral can be seen as this basically monument to light, and making explicit that metaphor, and how the aesthetic metaphor and the aesthetic experience of the Gothic cathedral mirrors the metaphysical reality of God's abundance and God's goodness and God's illumination. So if you think of the Gothic cathedral, and we have many great neo-Gothic examples in the city that you should go see. Of course, St. Patrick's, um, and then St. John's up in the Columbia area. And then St. Thomas, which is right across from St. Patrick's, which is an Episcopalian um, cathedral. But many of those things are similar. I like to go to both St. Thomas and St. Patrick because you can really see the differences on the play, how light plays in each of these spaces. But basically, the Gothic cathedral, and it's interesting too, just again, the technical developments that made a lot of this possible. And of course, in a few telltale signs that are part of Gothic architecture: the stained glass, the ribbed vaults, the arches that kind of come to a point. And at the time, it was given the name Gothic as a pejorative term because they thought it was kind of a repulsive development in architecture. But one of the things that I find interesting, just metaphorically, is what allowed for these Gothic cathedrals to rise up to the heavens, to reach the light, to have the strength in the load-bearing walls that you could then take out space to allow the glass to be there, was the other telltale sign, the flying buttresses on the side. And a lot of these were adding these to already existing cathedrals, so that the space could open up and more light would be allowed in. So I think that's interesting because you have this relationship, this kind of dialectical relationship between the earth and the heavens, that you aren't allowed to kind of start to reach the sky or have the space, the kind of physics to allow the light in without going down to the earth itself. So that's one way you might be able to kind of unpack this and see how even in just the technical developments there's I think a lot of and aesthetic developments, that there's a lot of interesting kind of philosophical, metaphorical things going on. But the cathedral, if we just think about just kind of a regular cathedral, and the whole way that it was designed was meant to mimic this kind of chain of being, this emanation of God. So you have behind the altar the big stained glass, and of course in front of that the crucifix and Christ, the light shining through to the priest or the bishop or whoever was doing mass, who at this point was facing the light, would have his back turned towards the laity, which he didn't turn around until Vatican II in 1962. So you had the light coming through, and then you had the laity as the light emanated out over the congregants, and then of course on the side you had these grand stained glass and bas reliefs and statues and all of these things. So one way we can think about the connections between the philosophy and the theology and art is in the embodiment of the Gothic cathedral.